When it comes to the topic of compassion, which we're discussing this week, I immediately think of the service organization Compassion International. Through Compassion, you can sponsor children from around the world, making sure they're receiving an education, medical supplies, spiritual growth, and so much more, including the hope that comes with all of this, that they can make something of themselves and have a future. You can write letters to your sponsored child. They write letters to you as well. Our youth group sponsors a boy named William from Kenya, and we've been supporting William since 2008. We've watched him grow from a little boy to a preteen, about the age of some of our youth. And just this week in youth group, we wrote letters to William. The topic of helping others that are less fortunate than you is an important one to discuss when talking about our Christian beliefs. Jesus was constantly encouraging his followers to serve the needs of the poor, and he himself spent much of his time reaching out to the outcasts, the forgotten, those whom everyone else was looking down upon. This wasn't about personal politics. Jesus wasn't debating whether we should give them a handout versus helping them help themselves. This wasn't about socialism versus capitalism and what role the government should play in the inequalities of society's economics. No, this was the Son of God reaching out to those whom God loves dearly, to show the rest of us who is on God's heart. So if God loves the poor, it stands to reason that we should too. I want to tell you about two compassionate Christians that I greatly admire. Both have taken steps in very practical ways to change the world around them. Both are following the call to be God's hands and feet in the world around them. Shane Claiborne is up first. Shane is an activist and an author. He's a leading figure in what they call the new monasticism movement. He's one of the founding members of an intentional community called the Simple Way in Philadelphia. Shane and 5 other Eastern University graduates founded this community. They purposefully moved into the poorest area of the city, and this happened to also be a place where there were no existing local churches. Members of the Simple Way participate in a variety of activities in and for the community, including planting gardens, running a store, feeding those who are hungry. Shane has written several books and speaks quite often at conferences and other Christian gatherings. I've seen him several times, as have a few of our youth and adults. His book here, The Irresistible Revolution, Living as an Ordinary Radical, is a great one. He also co-authored Jesus for President, which I've used quite often before. In The Irresistible Revolution, this is what Shane describes his journey as. He says, "In college, one of my professors said, 'Don't let the world steal your soul.' Being a Christian is about choosing Jesus and deciding to do something incredibly daring with your life. I decided to take him up on that challenge. At first I went on missions trips to take the good news to poor people. Then I discovered that they were the ones who brought the good news to me. Since then I've tried to shout that news to anyone who will listen, whether in evangelical megachurches or in the United Nations. The adventure has taken me from the streets of Calcutta to the war zones of Iraq. Following the footsteps of Jesus, I have found myself led to the halls of power and the slums of the destitute, amid tax collectors and peasants, and dragged into courtrooms and jail cells." Adults like Shane can be incredibly inspiring as they challenge us to follow Christ's call to love those in need. But my other favorite example of a compassionate Christian decided to form an organization called Loose Change to Loosen Chains, which is attempting to end the worldwide problem of modern-day slavery by raising funds and raising awareness across the country. The one who founded this is Zach Hunter, and I didn't mention this, but Zach started the organization when he was 12. He was learning in school about slavery in America's history. But soon he discovered that it wasn't just something that happened in the past. It was, in fact, a present problem as well. he found out that over 27 million people are still victims of human trafficking and other forms of slavery in the world today. And as idealistic and naive as any 12-year-old would be, he thought he could make a difference. Luckily for us, there are idealistic and naive young people in this world, because Zach has made a huge difference. In his first year, Loose Change to Loosen Chains raised $8,500 and donated it to organizations like the International Justice Mission, an incredible group that fights on the front lines to free slaves around the world. Zach is in his 20s now. Loose Change to Loosen Chains has made a major impact each of the years since then. Here's what's common to both of these stories. Someone heard the call of God and did something about it. They found a problem and they worked toward a solution. And here's an important ingredient. They didn't have superpowers or a ton of money or anything special. They didn't know the right people. They didn't have the right connections. They simply acted on what they felt God calling them to do. So what is God calling you to do? What problems can you identify in the world around you? It might be global, it might be local. How can you go about finding a solution to these problems that you identify? Let's challenge ourselves this week to be compassionate people.